Picture this. You're Pam Bondi, former Florida Attorney General, walking into what you think is just another routine congressional hearing. You've done this dance before. The questions, the cameras, the political theater. You're confident. You're prepared. Or so you think. What you don't know is that across the room, Representative Jasmine Crockett is sitting quietly with a thin manila folder beside her elbow. Inside that folder are emails, timestamps, signed documents, and a handwritten note that's about to end your career. This is a story of how one congresswoman armed with nothing but facts brought down a political heavyweight in real time on live television, and why what happened next changed everything. It's a Tuesday morning on Capitol Hill. The hearing room feels ordinary. Suits, microphones, the usual choreographed dance of congressional testimony. Pam Bondi sits confidently 2 rows down, ready to testify under oath. She's been here before. She knows how to handle pressure. But Jasmine Crockett? She's different. She sits at the end of the committee table, perfectly still, eyes fixed, pen in hand. She doesn't flip through notes like the others. She doesn't sip coffee. She just watches. Bondi's voice cuts through the room, steady and assured. I've had no direct communication with Westbridge Strategies or its affiliates in the last 12 months. A few heads nod. The chairman scribbles notes. Everything seems normal, but not for Jasmine. She blinks slowly, like she's counting in her head. 5 seconds pass. Then 10. She leans into her microphone. Miss Bondi, could you repeat that last statement for the record? Bondi turns toward her with that polite smile people use for annoying questions. Certainly, she says, repeating her denial word for word. Jasmine clicks her pen once. Then she says nothing, just stares at Bondi for a beat too long. Can you feel it? That shift in the room? Bondi adjusts in her chair. She lifts her chin like she suddenly needs air. The temperature drops. Something's been unleashed, and nobody knows what to do with it yet. You're aware that Westbridge Strategies is currently under federal investigation for illegal lobbying? Jasmine's voice cuts through again, firmer this time. Bondi nods. I've read the reports. Yes. And you're sure that you haven't communicated with anyone from that firm, email, phone, in person, since last October? Bondi crosses her legs slowly. That's correct. This is where it gets crazy. Jasmine glances down at that thin manila folder. No theatrics. No flourish. She just opens it. What happens next isn't loud or dramatic. It comes quietly in Jasmine's calm voice as she reads out loud. March 18th, 9:47 a.m. Hi, Pam. Just looping back with the revised talking points. Let us know if you're still comfortable pushing this at your Thursday appearance. Jeff, Westbridge Strategies. Bondi's lips part slightly. Her jaw stiffens. But she doesn't speak. Do you recognize this email? Jasmine asks. Silence. The room has completely shifted. No one's shuffling papers anymore. Every camera is locked on target. There's more, Jasmine continues, holding up a printout. But before I continue, do you still stand by your sworn testimony that you've had no contact with this firm? More silence. Bondi opens her mouth, but no sound comes out. She glances at the chairman like she's hoping for a lifeline. There isn't one. I'd need to check my records, she finally says, her voice cracking. But wait until you hear what comes next. Jasmine places the document face up on the table. The timestamp is from a Westbridge domain. You replied 12 minutes later with, looks good. I'll run it by Brian and confirm. Bondi looks down at the table, fingers curled into her palms. Someone in the back of the room exhales a breath they didn't realize they were holding. But Jasmine isn't finished. The room is only beginning to understand what's coming. Bondi tries to recover with typical political deflection. Representative Crockett, I receive dozens of emails each day from unsolicited sources. I'd have to see the full thread to understand the context. That's when Jasmine tilts her head slightly and gives a faintest nod. Not of agreement, but recognition. She's heard this dance before. Context is important, Jasmine replies coolly. So, let's make sure we get all of it. Bondi gives a nervous laugh and tries to regain control. Respectfully, Representative, this feels more like a cross-examination than an oversight hearing. A few chuckles flutter from the gallery, but Jasmine doesn't flinch. Respectfully, Miss Bondi, when someone gives sworn testimony before a congressional committee and that testimony doesn't match documented communication, that's not a feeling. That's a problem. The smirk vanishes from Bondi's face. Jasmine reaches for a second document. April 6, subject line, urgent coordination, governor's office, talking points. You replied with a PDF attachment, and the metadata confirms your device sent it. The committee room shifts again. Eyes widen. Let me be clear, Jasmine says. This isn't about your memory. This is about accountability. You sat in that chair and denied contact. Now we have timestamps, IP logs, and chain correspondence showing not just contact, but active participation. Bondi reaches for her water bottle. Her hand trembles slightly. But the most damning piece, the one that would make headlines, hadn't even been revealed yet. Jasmine still had one page left. She doesn't rush. She lets the weight of silence settle before reaching for the final document. Just 2 printed pages, stapled at the top. This one's dated May 2nd, 7:31 p.m. She says, attached was a cover letter from you, signed electronically using your personal consulting account DocuSign ID. Bondi's voice is barely audible. That wasn't part of my official work. But you signed it and submitted it to his office 2 days later. The timestamps match down to the minute. Then comes the moment that changes everything. Jasmine picks up the second page. There's a handwritten note scanned and attached. In the margin of the draft, it reads, quote, make sure Crockett never sees this. And it's underlined twice. A wave of disbelief moves across the room. Small sounds, shifting chairs, murmurs too low to catch. Bondi's eyes lock on the paper, face draining of color. You don't recall writing that note? Jasmine asks. I don't recall. You don't recall telling your own staff to hide material from a sitting member of Congress who was part of the oversight subcommittee involved in this case? I never said that. Jasmine leans forward. Your initials are next to the note. That silence returns. The kind that doesn't beg for a response because everyone already knows the answer. Would you like to amend your statement? Bondi lets her hands fall into her lap. She doesn't answer. For the record, Jasmine says, we now have 3 separate pieces of communication indicating a pattern of misrepresentation. 1, denial of contact with Westbridge. 2, coordinated talking points submitted under Miss Bondi's name. And 3, a direct instruction to obscure materials relevant to congressional review. Bondi straightens in her chair and whispers, I need a recess. The chairman hesitates. 5 minutes. There's no objection. The gavel taps once. Bondi stands slowly, like gravity itself has turned against her. She walks out, heels clicking down the hall. The cameras follow. The moment is no longer just inside that room. It's everywhere. Behind her, Jasmine sits back and exhales for the first time in what feels like hours. She doesn't look triumphant. She looks focused, like someone who knows this isn't over yet. When Bondi steps into the hallway, she doesn't speak to the press. No statement, no eye contact. She moves quickly, flanked by staffers, eyes down, lips pressed tight. But here's what makes this story incredible. Jasmine didn't raise her voice once. She didn't insult anyone. She didn't grandstand or perform. She just asked questions and brought the answers. And that precision, that surgical approach to the truth, made it impossible to discredit her. Within hours, the footage exploded across social media. The clip of Jasmine reading the handwritten note, make sure Crockett never sees this, was retweeted over 40,000 times. Commenters were tagging news anchors, legal analysts, politicians, even Crockett herself. But while the internet celebrated, Jasmine hadn't looked at her phone once. She was still focused on the work. The committee received a request from Bondi's counsel to delay testimony until they could review the evidence. When this was announced, Jasmine spoke before anyone else could. This committee was under the impression that Ms. Bondi had prepared thoroughly for this hearing. These communications weren't hidden. It is not the responsibility of this committee to wait for someone to check their inbox. Then she said something that cut the heart of it all. Let the record reflect the moment the truth came out. She ran. Someone clapped. One single clap before silence fell again. 3 weeks later, Bondi's world had shrunk completely. Speaking invitations canceled. Law firms distancing themselves. Her consulting firm's website taken down. No public appearances, no op-eds. The narrative faded quietly, the way damaged reputations do when the evidence is too sharp to deny. But Jasmine, she kept working. No victory laps, no media tours. Just the quiet satisfaction of someone who had done her job exactly as it should be done. In a rare interview weeks later, when asked about that moment when she saw the note with her name on it, Jasmine said something that resonated with millions. I felt like they saw me not as a colleague, not as a member of Congress, but as a problem. And that's when I knew I was doing something right. Because here's the truth about truth. It doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just sits there, quiet, obvious, patient, waiting for someone like Jasmine Crockett to say, let's talk about this. The systems that hold power don't fall apart all at once. They crack bit by bit, testimony by testimony, document by document. And sometimes all it takes is one person who won't look away. If this story moved you, if it made you believe that accountability is still possible, subscribe to this channel. Because truth doesn't fade. It just waits for someone brave enough to pick it up.